Hello, and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and joining me today is Dr. Brenda Greene, a literary activist inducted into the International Literary Hall of Fame for writers of African descent, and she is the founder and executive director of the Center for Black Literature and director of the National Black Writers Conference at Medgar Evers College. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I have followed your career and the work that you've been doing out at Medgar, and I asked you earlier, I said, have we met? Because I said when I was reading it, I can't believe that I don't know this woman.
Well, I know you. I know you.
Well, thank you for all of the work that you've been doing on behalf of Black writers at Medgar Evers. I've, been following the conferences, and you've got a new one coming up soon. Tell us about who we can expect, because people are invited. That post-pandemic, you're doing in person again.
Yes, this will be our first in-person conference since the pandemic, and it's Diasporic Visions, a celebration of Black speculative fiction for writers. And we are honoring Cherie Renee Thomas, who did a seminal book called Dark Matters on Black speculative fiction.
And you defined that for me,
yes,
because it was a term that I'm saying.
Yeah, Black speculative fiction is the fiction, it's an umbrella term that covers fantasy, horror, sci-fi, supernatural, futuristic.
Octavia Butler. Octavia
Butler is someone who you can think of as quintessential speculative Black fiction writer when she did Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. Kindred. In fact, one of the programs we have coming up for our Black Women's History Month is on Kindred, and looking at the fact that they now have a TV series on Kindred. But we are also honoring Jewel Parker Rose. We have Ternana Dew, who's done a lot of work on horror. We have Nisi Shaw. We have some other scholars, Jules Gomez, who's been doing this for many years. It's a one-day session of panels or roundtables where people will be discussing the issues and trends in Black speculative fiction. But that'll be on April the 1st. But on March 31st, we have people who have written papers representing the scholarship around Black speculative fiction and looking at the work of Cherie Renee Thomas and Jewel Parker Rhodes. And so that's the symposium. And then in the even years, we do a 4-day conference.
Wow. Well, and this is the 20 years, right?
Well, the center is 20 years old.
Right.
But the National Black Writers Conferences were actually begun at Medgar Evers College in 1986. And John Oliver Killens was the visionary leader. So up until 2000, we had conferences every other year. And when I founded the Center for Black Literature, one of the first things I did was to think about John Oliver Killens' vision to bring Black writers together every year to look at the state of Black literature and to look at the trends. And it's a gathering. It's a meeting place where people can talk about their work. There can be readings and workshops. And so we began hosting the National Black Writers Conference every other year, and a National Black Writers Symposium focused on an issue or on a particular writer in the alternate years.
And well, you have so much there too. You do a Killings newsletter.
Yes, our center has, my colleague calls it like a big house. And the house has many, many areas. One of our signature programs is the Killings Reading Series. We bring emerging and contemporary writers together. That's once a month. We have the Killings Review of Arts and Letters, our publication, and that can be purchased online on the African American Literary Book Club. Our signature youth program is Re-envisioning Our Lives Through Literature. We go into the middle schools and high schools and bring teaching artists into the schools and get students to read books and to create their own texts, their own stories and plays.
Well, just an incredible, and you even now have something for elderly.
That started
elderly
actually
program.
in 2003. And we have something for everyone.
Good.
And so the youth program started in 2003. The elders program came to us via Dr. Edith Rock, who said, you know, we need to make sure we're chronicling the stories of elders. And they present at our conference every year.
That is wonderful.
So all of that is on our website. Our website has all of the programs listed. You can find out about how to join our mailing list so that you get a sense of the programs. That's www.centerforblackLiterature.org.
Yes, I was just there, just there. The work is really, truly tremendous. So now you're doing all of this work for Black writers and have been doing it. And now we are in an environment where critical race theory, banning books, putting Black authors, LGBTQ authors on the spot. How do you address that, and what are your thoughts on where we are now in this country?
Yeah, we are in a very dangerous time. And actually, I just wrote an article on banned books and on critical race theory. And one of the challenges we have is that the general public equates critical race theory with having a culturally responsive curriculum that includes Black writers and includes history. And so critical race theory is really based on the legalities around institutionalized racism.
Right.
That's not what we're teaching in our schools.
I know. It has nothing to do with
kindergarten
books.
No,
that have been
it doesn't. It doesn't. And so I think at this point we have a responsibility to make sure that we write to our legislators, we join organizations. Penn has a really huge mailing list. They have a number of activities you can sign up to stop banned books. We have to make sure that we use banned books in the curriculum. We have to recover them. When you ban Beloved,
right.
Beloved.
Right. Toni Morrison's Beloved is high on that list of banned.
The 1619 Project, of course. And this whole idea of saying that African American literature is not substantive. I mean, African American literature is the core of of American literature. Toni Morrison writes about that, you know. And so we have to look at ensuring that we do. So, for example, in our Re-envisioning Our Lives Through Literature program, where we bring books into the schools, we are using 2 books that are on the banned books list.
And how are you getting away with it, though?
Because we recognize that our responsibility is to bring those books into the classroom. The principals and the schools we're working with are not afraid of that. In some states, the teachers would be afraid of losing their jobs.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I mean.
But we don't have to. Thank God, in New York City,
right.
We don't have to. We don't have that challenge of doing that. So and then one of the things I've done over the years, any book that appears to be controversial, I reach out to the parents. I've reached out to the teachers. We talk about that. We talk about why that has to be taught. And we give people an understanding of the value that reading these books has on affirming students' identity, on making them central in the American story in Western literature, on getting them to think outside of the box. So we affirm what this is doing. It's giving them the broad history. It's giving them the counter narrative. If we stay on this chain where we are banning books, Black people will remain invisible in literature.
Precisely because that's what they want to erase, most of it, our history.
Right.
You know, they often frame it in that talking about slavery makes white people feel bad. You know, I mean, and the solution to that is to erase the history completely, to not mention it, you know, that it existed and that's what this country was founded on for hundreds of years, not just a passing fancy.
I think that we have to come up with the realization that things are uncomfortable, there are many issues, and we have to get people to talk about it. We have to have conversations on racism. We have to have conversations on what's happening in this country. And our young people are surrounded with this. And if we don't create a space to have these conversations, what happens? You have violence that will continue to ensue. You have people who who really see themselves not represented, who do harmful things to themselves. So that's our responsibility, I think, as a society. That's our responsibility as educators.
Right. Well, Kimberly Crenshaw, who, as we all know,
Yes.
the creator of the term intersectionality,
Yes.
you know, was traveling this summer across the country delivering banned books to kids who needed them, you know, to people who needed them. Let's talk a little bit about the prospects for Black writers and in this publishing world that we find ourselves in now. We know that we've had a couple of high-profile editors, Jamia Wilson at Random House, Lisa Lucas also. But what is facing a Black writer now in terms of getting a book deal,
Yes.
getting a book tour, getting paid, and then having people then buy those books, which is an enormous blockade for a lot of writers, Black or white, no matter what color, just for writers, but for Black writers especially.
Right. Well, I applaud the fact that the publishing companies do recognize that there's a need, but they haven't really come up with all of the ways to identify and address the lack of Black people in the literary publishing field. So they have to do much more in that area. And so one of the things I think that it's important to recognize is that when a Black writer who goes out for an advance, right? They get an advance. A white writer, famous white writer, will also get an advance. The advance by the white writer is going to be at least double, at least what the Black writer is getting. And there's research to support that. Jasmine Ward talks about being an award-winning writer.
And she's one of my favorites.
Oh, yes.
She's brilliant.
And she could not get the advance that was really due her. So they're not getting the advances. I think that it's important to recognize that the big publishing houses are more concerned with publishing books that they think people will buy. You cannot rely on the New York Times book review list to figure out who's writing, what Black writers are writing. The African American Literature Book Club, which is the largest African American book club online, has a wide range of books. You have to look at the independent presses and independent publishers. I think
and independent bookstores.
And independent bookstores. If you go to the AALBC, African American Literature Book Club, that has a list of a number. People like Third World Press, Dr. Hakeem Mahabudi, is the oldest independent Black bookseller in the country. And so you have to go and support the books by like Third World Press, Just Us Books, a children's bookseller. The Red Sea Press, which has been doing books many, many years. And Amazon, right, you can go to Amazon and get the books quickly, but go to the Black presses, start there. And then if you can't find the book, make sure that you are looking at books written by Black writers. And so that you can go to Amazon and request that. And I think sometimes Black writers are faced with having to go to small presses and sometimes even self-publishing.
Right.
Because self-publishing is a way in. I think it's important that anyone who's interested in that understand that writing is a craft and that they make sure that they have a good editor and they can sometimes find an agent, but an agent is not going to take on their book unless they know that they can sell it. So you have to be persistent.
A lot, and you're sharing all of this at the center. But I was interested to read that you did not read a Black author until you got to college.
Yes.
So talk to us about that, and then what brought you to this point where you're making sure that everybody gets to write, to publish, and to read Black authors.
And growing up in New York City.
In New York City.
In New York City, in Brooklyn, and New York. And I came of age during the Black arts movement and went to New York University and was recruited there because the Black students organized and said, we need more Black students. And about 200 of us came in right after Dr. King was murdered. And became very much involved in the Black Student Union and in the newspaper that was there. And for the first time, I took a course in Black literature. And the course was taught by a white professor.
Of course.
Of course. And then I started taking a second course. And so I just became involved.
Do you remember what the first book was that you read, though? I mean, that is so.
I want to say. I really don't remember. I really don't remember.
I was trying to remember what the very first of mine was as well.
What comes to mind is, and I think that's too late. What comes to mind is I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings.
Right.
But I think
Maya Angelou.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's too late. But I think I was introduced more to the poets like Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez.
Right. It's a very short history in terms of popularity and presence, you know, for this current, the way we envision bookselling and writers now.
Well, I think there's an ebb and flow. You know, I remember one of the conferences we asked, there's a renaissance now because we had all of these Black writers on the bestsellers list like Terry McMillan and Toni Morrison. Right. And is this a renaissance to end all renaissance? And of course it wasn't. Right. You know, because with Black Lives Matter, we had another kind of renaissance. And now we're seeing another shift. You know, if you look at the book lists, the writers who come up, during Black Lives Matter, you had the Black Lives Matter movement, not that it's over, but you had many more nonfiction books coming up. And so now you're seeing, there's still books there, but you're seeing kind of a shift in what people are reading. So that's why I'm saying you have to constantly be very deliberate and intentional about looking for other ways to find the books that are being read.
And one of the ways we find books is in the award system, too, just like the Oscars for the films and who gets nominated and who gets snubbed. It's the same thing in the world of literature. You know, Imani Perry just won a big one recently.
Yes.
I mean, and then that, you know, highlights her work and others as well.
Right. Well, there's always a few who they will highlight. But even if you look at the awards, there's been a slight shift. When Lisa Lucas was at the National Book Foundation, the number of Black writers, I don't know if you remember that year, it was amazing.
I know. We interviewed her. She did a fabulous job. Fabulous.
Yeah, she really did. And so you see, again, the ebb and flow. And then it becomes a part. It's very important to be involved. And that's part of why I do the work I do. You have to, if you're invited to be part of a peer reviewer, you have to be there. You have to be at the table. You have to be in the publishing houses. So it's good people are there, but we have to support them. One of the programs that our college is going to be involved in is a publishing program started by Walter Mosley at City College, is looking at, I don't remember the acronym, but looking at how we bring youth, college students into the publishing industry. And they have to really have a love of books because we know in publishing and journal, you don't make a lot of money.
Exactly. I was going to say you have to have a love of books.
You have to have a love of books.
And live very inexpensively.
That's right. I'm a professor of English, and we have a BA program with concentrations in professional writing, creative writing, and cross-cultural literature with a focus on the African diaspora. And many of our students are in creative writing and professional writing. But those are the ones who love writing. Right. They have decided that's what they want to do. And I think that what we see among young people, they're not as concerned with finding the corporate job. They're concerned with finding what they want to do. And that's how we have to support them. So they may not make a lot of money, but they're willing to go out and to have other jobs so that they can fulfill their passion. And we have to nurture that and cultivate that.
Right. We always, used to say, we'll help you with your writing, but here's a waitressing or a waiting job so you can pay your rent and afford to eat. So speculative writing is the focus of the conference coming up, but what other areas do you think that if someone is really interested in catching hold in the writing field, what's hot?
Well, memoir is very hot.
Yeah.
Everybody is writing their stories. But as one of my colleagues say, what makes you think someone will want to read your story. So there are different ways to write your story. It can just be a chronicle, but if you situate your story in the context of what's going on in the larger world, and just show how politics and the environment help to shape your life, I think you end up having a story that's much more meaningful and other people can relate to. Talking about Imani Perry, her book on Lorraine Hansberry was fascinating.
Right.
You know,
right.
I just learned so much more. And it's because of the way she situated, you know, that book. So I think that biography and memoir and historical fiction, books that take, like what Dola Perkins Valdez did, Take My Hand, which was based on what happened to two young girls who were forcibly sterilized as teens. She took that and made it into a narrative. And I think historical fiction ends up being a really good way to, as a starting point for telling the story and then bringing in other ways to examine it, looking at how those stories end up representing the larger issues we're talking about. So literature does that. There's
Right.
so many ways, you know, your own story, biography, historical fiction, and of course, you can create stories in fiction based on real events. It doesn't have to be historical, but that ends up giving people a way to think about what they're dealing with and addressing in a different way.
Right, right. Well, your students and all of the people associated with the center are very lucky to have you to encourage them on and give them. I mean, do you have favorite writers, or are you like, I'm not going to get into that?
Well, yes, yeah. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that because,
because once you start naming, and if you don't include,
that's right. But I am blessed that I have an opportunity to interview many writers. I actually have a radio show, Writers on Writing, so I have an opportunity to interview writers and get them to talk about their work and their lives and on their craft. And also sometimes to do book reviews. I think we need, and for people out there, we need more people writing book reviews on our writers.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now the Jubilee took place.
Jubilee was so exciting. We celebrated 20 years, and it was phenomenal, fantastic event. Sonia Sanchez was our honorary chairperson, and we had an outstanding honorary committee with Greg Carr, Karen Edwidge Dandakat.
Oh, love her writing.
Yes,
I
love her.
well.
Yes, Talib Kweli. Yes, it's like a little relation.
Right, right. Well, might that be your hip hop son?
Yeah, he's the hip hop one, the internationally known hip hop artist.
Yeah, the other son is a constitutional lawyer.
Yes, professor.
Professor.
Yes.
Right.
And what was interesting, they both had books that came out the same year.
No kidding.
I was able to interview them on Writers on Writing. So Talib wrote a memoir, and talking about memoir, Vibrate Higher, is story of his life, but it also talks about all the issues that he faced in coming up. And
Right.
Jamal did How Rights Went Wrong, and it was a really funny story because they both said, we have books coming out, and they came out within 2 months of each other.
That is something.
That is phenomenal.
But I understand it's your hip hop son that took you to the White House. So
Yes, he took me and his mother and my mother,
Right.
his grandmother, and that was really a very special occasion and a gift. And I had an opportunity to meet his sister, Maya, who I found out later was my student at
President Obama's sister Maya,
President
right?
Obama's.
Right.
She was my student at NYU.
Oh my goodness.
I was teaching a course on culturally responsive curriculum, and someone said she used to always talk about her brother. This is before he became a senator. You should meet him. You should meet him. He would love, because we were reading the Culture Wars and all
Right.
of these books and how to teach, diverse students. And then one of my students came up to me. Well, you know who her brother was? Maya.
Right.
She talked, it was phenomenal. But one of the great things about teaching is that you impact thousands of students over the years. I've been in this field for like 50 years, and you're continually meeting people our featured poet at the Jubilee was Mahogany Brown. And I had forgotten, but she reminded me, you were my teacher in children's literature.
Right.
And she said, I always remember that course. I met someone who's working in the legislature, working with one of the, in the assembly, and she's like a chief of staff. You were my favorite instructor. And so those are the kinds of things that really impact you. And so, you know, you find your passion. My passion has been teaching, serving, I'm serving, you know, Black writers, teaching. And my passion now is making sure that the Center for Black Literature is sustained and that we make sure it's the only one of its kind in the country. It's modeled after the Gwendolyn Brooks Center for Black Literature and Creative Writing, but we're doing a number of programs, and I think those programs can be replicated.
Right.
And I just encourage people to visit the center, to sign up for our mailing list. We have a Wild Seas retreat coming up, one in the winter and one in the summer. We still have openings.
Yeah, those look fascinating,
Yeah.
where you actually have time.
You have time.
Spend several
And
days to develop.
Right. And there's so few
thoughts.
spaces for writers of color to really focus on their writing in a safe and nurturing space where they don't become the spokesman for the race or the ethnic group. And they can really focus on what's important to them.
Well,
I had that experience, so I know what that means.
Well, you are doing such amazing work out there. I am thrilled. I'm going to be signing up for the Elder program. And, to work on my memoir. So you'll be seeing me out there. Thank you.
And wonderful, it's on Zoom.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brenda Greene, founder and executive director of the Center for Black Literature and director of the National Black Writers Conference at Medgar Evers College. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Come back again. I love your stories. I love the work you're doing.
I'd love to come back again, and thank you so much for having me and giving us this platform to share the wonderful work that we're doing.
My pleasure. And that is it for us at this time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. We'll see you the next time.